Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you were taught to believe as truth was simply a convenient narrative designed to keep you obedient, distracted, and docile. Think about it. In a world where information flows faster than ever before, how is it possible that humanity has become more misinformed, more impulsive, and less capable of thinking critically than at any other point in history? How did we, with all our technological brilliance, create a generation that struggles to think for itself? We didn't arrive here because people lack intelligence. We arrived here because the systems shaping our minds have been deliberately designed to suppress independent thought. Education, media, technology, and even culture have all contributed to a silent collapse of human reasoning. And once you see how deep this goes, you can never unsee it. For centuries, the human mind was viewed as sacred, a landscape of infinite potential. Philosophers like Socrates and Kant understood that the purpose of education wasn't to fill minds with facts, but to teach them how to think. Somewhere along the way, that purpose was lost. We stopped teaching people how to think and began teaching them what to think. Modern education, once a beacon of enlightenment, slowly transformed into a factory of conformity. Its goal shifted from awakening intellectual curiosity to producing obedient citizens who follow rules without question. Schools modeled after the Industrial Revolution taught children to memorize, repeat, obey, until generations grew up fearing mistakes more than loving truth. Foucault said every system of power creates its own truths, and education became one of the most effective tools of control. Instead of nurturing curiosity, we punished it. Instead of celebrating individuality, we trained uniformity. And now we have a generation brilliant at passing tests, but lost when asked to think for themselves. Have you noticed how uncomfortable people become when faced with deep questions? Questions without quick answers. Why do so many prefer scrolling endlessly over meaningful thought? It isn't laziness, it's conditioning. We've been trained to crave comfort over depth, entertainment over enlightenment, noise over silence. Because silence forces you to confront yourself, and that is something modern culture teaches you to avoid. Jung warned that a person who cannot think independently becomes prey to the collective unconscious, moving with the herd, believing, consuming, and reacting without awareness. Today, that herd is amplified by technology. Social media, once celebrated as a triumph of communication, has become a psychological trap. Algorithms reward outrage and simplicity while punishing nuance and patience. The more extreme the opinion, the more attention it gets. The more shallow the idea, the more it spreads. We are drowning in information, yet starving for wisdom. We confuse data with understanding and opinions with truth. In a world of digital chaos, critical thinking has become an act of rebellion. When was the last time you truly thought for yourself, not repeated something you read or shared something that felt right, but genuinely questioned the foundation of your own beliefs? If that question feels uncomfortable, that discomfort is the first sign that your mind is waking up from the anesthesia of modern culture. Stupidity today is not an accident, it's a product, it's profitable. A population that doesn't think is easier to control, easier to entertain, and easier to manipulate. Governments, corporations, and media all benefit from a society that confuses intelligence with information and freedom with distraction. But stupidity is reversible. Once the human mind remembers its power, it becomes impossible to enslave it the same way again. Never before has humanity had such immediate access to the world's knowledge. Yet instead of enlightenment, we've entered an era of distraction. The problem isn't lack of information, it's the overwhelming flood of shallow, rapid, fragmented stimuli that leave no space for thought. Every scroll, every click, every like is part of a psychological experiment built around manipulating your attention through dopamine loops. Thinking becomes painful, scrolling becomes addictive. Herbert Marcuse called this one dimensional thought. People no longer suppressed through fear, but through comfort. Give them endless entertainment, convenience, and illusions of freedom, and they stop questioning the system. That is the world we live in now, a digital paradise built on invisible chains. We've become constantly connected, but profoundly isolated, surrounded by information, but starving for meaning, mistaking exposure for understanding. Even silence, the birthplace of thought, has become something we fear. Neuroscience shows that constant digital stimulation rewires the brain, reducing our ability for deep focus and long-term memory. The mind becomes fast but shallow, able to access data instantly yet unable to interpret meaningfully. A distracted generation is a docile one. Political manipulation becomes easy when people are too busy chasing trends to reflect on truth. Chomsky called it manufacturing consent, not censorship, but distraction. You don't need to silence people when you can drown them in noise. While the world debates trivial issues online, real decisions are made quietly in the background. Social media doesn't show you reality. It shows you a curated reflection of your emotions, fears, and biases. Outrage sells, fear sells, division sells. Every feed becomes an echo chamber. And when you hear only what you agree with, independent thought becomes nearly impossible. We no longer seek truth. we seek validation. And validation is the slow death of thought. How many of your opinions are truly yours? How many were shaped by repetition, trends, or social approval? In today's world, the hardest thing isn't being intelligent, it's being independent. The corruption of thought didn't happen only through technology, but also through the decay of language and culture. Words like viral, trendtent, influencer have replaced meaning with performance. We don't communicate anymore, we broadcast. Wittgenstein said the limits of our language define the limits of our world. As language becomes shallow, so does thought. Even success has been redefined. We no longer ask who we are becoming, we ask who is watching us. External validation replaced inner growth. The self became a product, not a mystery. Media, too, shifted from informing to entertaining. Outrage became more profitable than truth. Engagement more valuable than evidence. Everyone has a voice, yet fewer people have something meaningful to say. This intellectual emptiness creates the perfect environment for control. When people stop thinking deeply, they start feeling blindly. And whoever controls emotion controls perception. We eliminated boredom, but in doing so, we killed imagination. Silence used to be the soil in which creativity grew. Now the moment silence approaches, we escape into the glow of a screen. We traded solitude for noise and lost the art of thinking. Yet beneath all this noise, something sacred still survives the human capacity to awaken. The very fact that you're listening means you feel it, a quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that something essential is missing from modern life. That feeling is not weakness. It is your consciousness trying to surface. Thinking in today's world requires slowing down when everything rushes, listening when everyone shouts, daring to be wrong so you can discover what's right. Independent thought requires courage because a thinking mind is impossible to control. It questions everything, authority, culture, media, even itself. Across the world, more people are waking up from the hypnosis of convenience. They are rediscovering reading, reflection, silence, and truth. They are remembering that knowledge is not information. It is transformation. The true revolution of the 21st century will not be political or technological. It will be psychological. It will begin in the mind. And at the core of this awakening is the most uncomfortable truth of all. We have willingly participated in our own intellectual decline. We traded reflection for convenience, truth for comfort, meaning for distraction. The real enemy of thought has never been ignorance. It is indifference. Stupidity is not the absence of intelligence, it is the rejection of awareness. Each time we choose comfort over curiosity, distraction over reflection, conformity over authenticity, we dim the light of our own mind. We are not born unable to think, we are conditioned to forget how. To reverse this, we must unlearn more than we learn. True intelligence begins with awareness, the courage to see through illusion. Awareness demands that we question everything, our habits, our culture, our beliefs, even our identity. We cannot wake up from a dream until we realize we are dreaming. Reclaiming thought begins with silence, the rebellion of the modern age. In silence, we meet ourselves. Then comes curiosity, the spark of every great mind. Solitude follows, the forge of depth and originality. And finally, courage, the willingness to think alone in a world that fears independent thought. When silence, curiosity, solitude, and courage return, something extraordinary happens. The mind clears, the fog lifts, and we are no longer participants in our own decline. We become architects of our own awakening.